Mark, a hard-working taxi driver struggling to make ends meet, came across a distraught woman late one evening. She was in tears, holding her small child, and desperately needed a ride. Mark, feeling her pain, drove her home and refused to accept any payment, sensing she was going through a hard time. Little did he know, this small act of kindness would soon change his life in ways he couldn't have imagined. Just hours later, his phone rang with a piece of news that would leave him stunned. Hi everyone, welcome to Mystic Tales. Today, I'm excited to share a new story with you. Later that night, as Mark lay in bed, he couldn't stop thinking about the woman and her child. It was rare for him to refuse payment. After all, he needed every bit of income he could get, but something about her situation just felt different. He wondered what had led her to that point, why she had been so upset, but he knew he might never find out. Just as he was drifting off to sleep, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was unusual to get a call so late, and for a moment, Mark hesitated. But something urged him to answer. On the other end of the line was a voice he didn't recognize, calm but with a sense of urgency. "Are you Mark, the taxi driver?" the voice asked. Confused, Mark confirmed it was him. The caller explained that he was calling on behalf of the woman he had driven home earlier that evening. His heart skipped a beat. Had something happened to her? "She's safe, but there's something important we need to discuss," the man continued. "She didn't want to share her story earlier, but she told us about what you did for her. It's something that will not be forgotten." Mark sat up in bed, fully awake now. His thoughts raced. What could this mean? The man explained that the woman he had helped came from a very wealthy family, but she had been estranged from them for years due to a personal tragedy. She had fallen on hard times, trying to make a life for herself without their support. Her journey had been full of hardship, and that night, she had been at her breaking point. She was going through one of the toughest moments of her life, the caller said. And you, Mark, showed her kindness when she needed it most. Mark's mind spun. He had just done what he thought was right, but why was he being told all this now? Before he could ask more questions, the man paused and then dropped the unexpected news. The woman's family had learned about his gesture, and they wanted to meet him. Mark's head was spinning. He didn't understand why this family wanted to meet him. After all he did was refuse payment for a ride. But something told him there was more to the story. The man on the phone gave him an address and asked if he could meet them the next day. Mark hesitated, unsure of what to expect, but in the end, curiosity got the better of him. The next morning, Mark found himself standing outside a grand house. The kind of place he had only ever seen from the outside while driving passengers through the wealthier parts of town. He had never imagined he'd be stepping through the doors of a home like this. Nervously, he rang the bell. Within moments, the door swung open, and he was greeted by an older man in a suit, the same voice from the phone. "Mark, thank you for coming," the man said with a warm smile. He introduced himself as John, a close family friend. As Mark followed him inside, he couldn't help but notice the expensive artwork on the walls, the polished floors, everything about the house screamed luxury. They entered a large sitting room, where the woman from the night before was waiting. She looked much more composed now, her face no longer marked by the sadness that had overwhelmed her the night before. She stood up as Mark approached, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Mark! I don't know how to thank you," she began. "Last night, I was at my lowest. I didn't know how I was going to get through it, and then you came along. You didn't ask for anything in return, you just helped me. I don't know many people who would do that." Mark shifted uncomfortably. He wasn't used to receiving so much attention for something he saw as a simple act of kindness. But before he could respond, John spoke up. "There's something you need to know, Mark. This family has been through a lot, and though they're wealthy, they've faced their own tragedies. When you helped her last night, you did more than you realize. You reminded us that there are still good people out there." Mark listened, still unsure of where this was going. But then John dropped the news that left him speechless. John paused for a moment, as if trying to find the right words. Then he said, "The family you helped, they're not just wealthy, they're incredibly influential. They own several businesses in the city. But they've always believed in using their wealth to help others, to give back to those who show kindness without expecting anything in return. Mark was confused. He had never expected anything in return for what he did, it was just a moment of compassion. But John continued, they've decided that your act of kindness shouldn't go unnoticed. They want to offer you a life-changing opportunity. Mark's heart raced. Life-changing? What could they possibly mean by that? He had never imagined that one small gesture could lead to something so significant. He listened carefully as John explained that the family had decided to offer him a financial gift, enough to pay off all his debts and secure his future. But it wasn't just money. They were also offering him a position in one of their businesses, a chance to have a stable job with a good income and the potential to grow. Mark was stunned. It was as if all the struggles he had faced were suddenly being lifted away. He had spent years working long hours, barely scraping by. And now, in a single moment, his entire life was being turned around. The woman stood up and approached him. You didn't know it at the time, but that night, you gave me hope. I felt like I had lost everything, but your kindness reminded me that there are still good people in the world. This is our way of saying thank you. Mark didn't know what to say. He had always believed that kindness was its own reward, but now he was being offered something far beyond anything he could have ever imagined. He realized that sometimes, the smallest actions can have the biggest impact, not just on others, but on your own life as well. Mark left the meeting in disbelief, his mind still reeling from everything he had heard. He had gone from worrying about how he would pay his next bill, to being offered not only financial security but a job that would change the course of his life. It all felt like a dream, but it was real. And it had all started with a simple act of kindness. As the days passed, Mark began his new job at the family's business. It was challenging at first, but he quickly learned the ropes and found himself enjoying the work. For the first time in years, he didn't feel the constant pressure of financial struggles weighing him down. He had a future to look forward to, a future that had once seemed so out of reach. But more than the money or the job, what stayed with Mark was the feeling that his kindness had made a real difference in someone's life. The woman and her family kept in touch with him, and as time went on, they became more than just business associates. They became friends. Mark found himself welcomed into a circle of people who appreciated him not just for what he had done, but for who he was. One evening, as Mark sat at home, reflecting on everything that had happened, he realized something important. Life had been hard for him, but he had never let it take away his compassion for others. And in the end, that compassion had led to opportunities he never thought possible. The ripple effect of kindness is real, and sometimes, it can change your life in ways you never imagined. Mark's story was proof of that. Here's a continuation of the story, keeping the same tone and theme. Months passed, and Mark had settled into his new role at the family's business. His life had taken a remarkable turn, yet he remained grounded. The lessons he learned during his years of struggle stayed with him, reminding him of the value of humility and compassion. One day, Mark was called into the office of the company's CEO, none other than the woman's father, Mr. Harrison. The older man, known for his stoic demeanor and sharp business acumen, had always intrigued Mark. Despite his wealth and influence, he seemed to carry a quiet sadness, a depth that made him more approachable than intimidating. Mark, come in, Mr. Harrison said warmly as Mark stepped inside. Have a seat. Mark sat down, trying to mask his nervousness. Though he had grown more confident in his new role, moments like these still made him feel like the struggling taxi driver he used to be. I wanted to talk to you about something important, Mr. Harrison began. You've been doing excellent work here, and my family and I are grateful for everything you've done, not just for us but for the company. But I've been thinking, kindness like yours shouldn't just stop at a single act. It should ripple outward, inspiring others to do the same. Mark nodded, unsure where the conversation was headed. My family has decided to start a new initiative, Mr. Harrison continued. A foundation dedicated to helping individuals who've fallen on hard times, much like you were before we met. We want to provide them with resources, mentorship, and opportunities to rebuild their lives. And we want you to lead it. Mark's eyes widened in shock. Me? Lead a foundation? Yes, Mr. Harrison said with a smile. You know firsthand what it's like to struggle, to feel hopeless, and to rely on the kindness of strangers. There's no one better suited to understand the needs of the people we aim to help. You've already proven that you have the heart and determination to make a difference. Mark was speechless. The idea of leading such an initiative was both daunting and exhilarating. He thought back to his own experiences, nights spent worrying about rent, the shame of having to rely on food banks, and the relief that even small acts of kindness could bring. If he could be part of offering that same hope to others, how could he say no? I don't know what to say, Mark finally stammered. This is an incredible opportunity, but I'm not sure I'm qualified. You are, Mr. Harrison said firmly. And you won't be doing it alone. We'll provide you with all the support and resources you need. All I ask is that you bring your passion and compassion to the role. After a moment of reflection, Mark nodded. I'll do it. The foundation launched a few months later, and Mark threw himself into the work. He met with countless individuals, each with their own stories of hardship and resilience. Many reminded him of himself, hard-working people who had fallen on hard times through no fault of their own, desperately seeking a second chance. One of the first people the foundation helped was a single mother named Clara, who had lost her job and was on the verge of homelessness. When she came to the foundation, she was hesitant and embarrassed, but Mark's genuine empathy quickly put her at ease. The foundation provided her with temporary housing, career counseling, and eventually, a job within one of the family's businesses. Watching Clara regain her confidence and rebuild her life filled Mark with a sense of purpose he had never felt before. As the foundation grew, so did Mark's influence. He became a public figure, often speaking at events and sharing his story to inspire others. Despite the attention, he remained humble, always attributing his success to the power of kindness and the opportunities he had been given. One evening, as Mark was locking up the foundation's office, he received a call from John, the family friend who had first contacted him months ago. Mark, I thought you'd like to know, Clara just made her first donation to the foundation. She said she wanted to give back to the place that helped her. Mark smiled, his heart swelling with pride. That's incredible. It's amazing to see the cycle of kindness continue. It is, John agreed. You've created something truly special, Mark. This foundation is changing lives. Mark hung up and stood in the quiet office, reflecting on how far he had come. What had started as a simple act of compassion, a single unpaid taxi ride, had grown into something far greater than he could have ever imagined. It was a testament to the power of kindness, the impact of paying it forward, and the potential within every individual to make a difference. As Mark locked the door and stepped out into the cool night air, he couldn't help but feel a profound sense of gratitude. His life had been transformed, not just by the generosity of others, but by his own willingness to extend kindness without expecting anything in return. And in doing so, he had not only changed his own story but had become a catalyst for change in the lives of countless others. Mark's journey was far from over, but he knew one thing for certain: the ripple effect of kindness had no limits, and he was determined to keep it going. Here's the continuation of Mark's journey. As the foundation continued to grow, Mark found himself immersed in stories of resilience and transformation. Each day brought new challenges, but also new victories: families reunited, careers reignited, and lives restored. The foundation had become a beacon of hope for the community, and Mark was at its heart. One day, while reviewing applications for assistance, Mark noticed a familiar name. It was a man named Greg, someone Mark hadn't seen in years. Greg had been a fellow taxi driver and one of Mark's closest friends during his hardest times. They had shared countless late-night shifts, bonding over their struggles and dreams. But Greg had fallen on even harder times after losing his job due to an injury. Mark's heart sank as he read Greg's story: unemployed, facing eviction, and struggling to provide for his family. Without hesitation, Mark picked up the phone and called him. "Greg, it's Mark. I saw your application, and I want to help." Greg was initially hesitant. "Mark, I appreciate it, but I don't want to be a charity case." "You're not," Mark assured him. "You've always been there for others. Let me be there for you now." Greg agreed to meet with Mark at the foundation's office the next day. When they reunited, it was an emotional moment for both of them. Mark could see the weariness in Greg's eyes, but also a spark of hope. Over the following weeks, the foundation worked with Greg to find him a job that accommodated his physical limitations. They also provided his family with temporary housing and financial support. Slowly but surely, Greg began to rebuild his life. Seeing his old friend regain his footing reminded Mark of the importance of second chances and the power of community. Meanwhile, the foundation's success began to attract attention from beyond the city. Media outlets ran stories about Mark's journey, and philanthropists from around the country reached out, eager to support his mission. With this newfound support, the foundation expanded its reach, opening branches in other cities and helping even more people in need. Despite the growing recognition, Mark remained humble. He often visited the local branch, where it had all started, spending time with clients and sharing his story to inspire them. One day, while speaking to a group of people seeking assistance, he noticed a young boy in the audience. The boy's wide-eyed gaze reminded Mark of himself as a child, filled with dreams but unsure of how to achieve them. After the session, Mark approached the boy and his mother. "Hi, I'm Mark. What's your name?" "Daniel," the boy replied shyly. "It's nice to meet you, Daniel. What do you want to be when you grow up?" Mark asked. "A pilot," Daniel said with a small smile. Mark knelt to his level. "That's a great dream. And you know what? Dreams can come true if you work hard and believe in yourself. We're here to help you and your mom. You're not alone." Daniel's mother teared up, thanking Mark for his kindness. Moments like these reminded Mark of why he had started this journey and why he needed to keep going. As the years passed, the foundation became a symbol of hope and resilience. It wasn't just about providing financial support, it was about restoring dignity, fostering community, and inspiring others to give back. Mark's leadership turned it into a movement, proving that even the smallest acts of kindness could create waves of change. One evening, as Mark sat in his office, he received an unexpected visitor, the woman who had been the catalyst for his journey. She entered with a smile, looking happier and more confident than ever. "Mark," she began, "I've been following your work, and I can't tell you how proud I am of everything you've accomplished. You've changed so many lives." Mark stood, shaking her hand warmly. "I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. You reminded me of the importance of kindness and how it can change everything." She nodded, her eyes glistening with emotion. "It's amazing how life works. That night, I thought my world was ending. But your kindness gave me hope, and now, it's giving hope to so many others." The two shared a heartfelt conversation, reflecting on how far they had both come. As she left, Mark realized that their meeting had come full circle. The ripple of kindness that began with a single taxi ride had grown into a wave, touching lives far beyond what he had ever imagined. Mark's story was now a testament to the idea that every act of compassion, no matter how small, has the potential to create something extraordinary. And as he looked out at the city lights from his office window, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the struggles that had shaped him, for the opportunities he had been given, and for the chance to make a difference. The journey was far from over. There were still lives to touch, dreams to nurture, and kindness to spread. And Mark was ready to continue the work, knowing that the power of one person's compassion could truly change the world.